Welcome to the Global Medical Device Podcast, where today's brightest minds in the medical device industry go to get their most useful and actionable insider knowledge, direct from some of the world's leading medical device experts and companies.
The medical device industry is built on continuous improvement. And that's not just for devices. It means for the people building those devices. Greenlight Guru Academy is the ultimate resource to learn and grow for medical device professionals. From quick, practical lessons to comprehensive certifications, you'll learn everything you need to know to keep up with the medical device industry. Visit www.greenlight.guru/academy today to start learning the skills for tomorrow. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking with Cristiano Fontana with ThreeBridges. We're going to be talking a little bit about fundraising and pre-money valuation. Cristiano is a co-founder of CrossBay Medical, Inc. He has over 15 years experience in the healthcare environment. You'll be able to tell throughout the episode that I do not speak Italian, but Cristiano is very gracious in the way I pronounce his name and so forth. So in addition to his role at CrossBay Medical, Cristiano serves as a partner of IStarter, one of the top European angel-led accelerators created by 100 top managers and entrepreneurs. He's also a partner of ClubDealOnline, which is an equity crowdfunding portal that connects growth-ready entrepreneurs like startups and SMEs with investors. In 2018, he founded ThreeBridges MNC, which is a consulting firm that provides business development advisory services for startups, distribution companies, and SMEs in the global medtech market. He was born in Milan, Italy, and Cristiano studied economics, business, and later earned a master's degree in corporate management and an executive MBA and an executive in corporate finance at STA Bocconi. Cristiano has a lot of experience to share with companies who are seeking funding. I hope you're able to gain some valuable insights in this episode. Thanks. Hey, everyone. Welcome back today to the Global Medical Device Podcast. This is Etienne Nichols, your host. Today with me is Cristiano Fontana. We're going to be talking about QMS and the regulatory impacts on fundraising, pre-money valuation, and market access and commercialization. I'm laughing a little bit because I've already messed up. So Cristiano has one in the bag, and hopefully we can get through this podcast and have a good time today. Cristiano, do you want to talk a little bit about your company? I mean, we have some detail to get into about fundraising, but maybe we could talk about what you do at ThreeBridges.
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So just a few words about myself and my background. I'm in the medtech space since more or less almost 20 years now. And background is 100% business, more on the corporate finance, side of it. But then in professional life, I started and been working in the commercialization of medical devices for almost 15 years. Being involved in many different clinical areas, all the major surgeries, orthopedics, OBGYN, pediatrics, also diagnostic. And I would say working with big corporation as a partner, as a distributor, like Medtronic, Bayer, Smith & Nephew, and so on, but also many other small companies that wanted to introduce new technologies into different territories. So I really learned how to introduce medical devices in different health systems. And I also co-founded a startup back in 2009 in the OBGYN space called CrossBay Medical, where I'm still a board member, based in California. And we have taken 4 products through FDA and CE. So I learned a little bit the path from product development to regulatory and so on. And we had 3 early deals with corporations, licensing for global rights. And then I decided to move into the consultancy side of the business, and I founded ThreeBridges, and where I'm CEO. And we are a consulting company helping 100% focus on medtech, helping mainly early stage, and so startups finding their way from product development to fundraising, regulatory, and market access and initial commercialization. So we're a small team of professionals with different expertise. There's people in the team that are more engineering, product dev oriented, other that are regulatory. Myself that I do, and probably we're going to talk about that a little bit, also fundraising and pre-money valuation, and other that are pure marketing and sales. And the team is based in US, Europe, Middle East, and Singapore. So this is what we do, and we also, of course, cooperate with Greenlight Guru, and we have a partnership in place. So that's also one of the reasons why I'm here tonight.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. And your extensive background, I think, is going to be very beneficial to a lot of companies if they're take advantage of maybe some of the advice that you give today. One of the questions that kind of comes to mind when I talk about, pre-money valuation or the impacts on fundraising. We talked a little bit, or we mentioned in the beginning, QMS and regulatory impact. What does that look like to you, or someone coming in to evaluate a company or value a company? What are they looking for?
So they are looking first to understand, from the entrepreneur side, let's say they ask for valuation in order to understand, or having some backup and stand behind their demand and ask when they're looking for fundraising and try to raise funds, and they're asking for sometimes just for evidence that can back up what they would like to have as an evaluation. And they also looking for understanding, let's say, the models that they can use to value their company, and they also would like to understand how much is the ownership that they have to leave. And so it's also a matter of understanding exactly the fundraising strategy and the dilution strategy that it's not just about the round they're facing, but also the following rounds that probably they will have to go through in the next phases. Yeah, so that's the first thing, but also, then it turns to be many different things. It turns to be an internal exercise to really challenge their business model. And it turns to be sort of a negotiational perspective where, they would like to give less of the company to the investor, but many times they don't have an idea of what kind of investor they're talking to and what really their valuation or their financial models that they build really can help them toward the different investor, which is very different from a business angel to a family office to a VC institutional investor. You have to let's say, to approach the conversation to those investors in different ways.
Okay, that makes sense. So early stage entrepreneurs, startups, I mean, there's different, like you said, there's different paths. What are some of the more common paths, or can you describe some different things that maybe an early stage company needs to be thinking about?
Regarding what, the valuation or?
Yeah, regarding the valuation. So if they're going to be approached by, what's the best way for them to start looking for that fundraising? Or I don't know, there's so many different ways. Yeah.
But I understand your point. So the first thing it would be to really have a clear idea of the entire journey. Right. So what it will take from there, understanding really their business model, their story, their narrative, and have come up with, a business plan that is reliable as far as a business plan can be reliable, but at least, that there is a consistency between the strategic view and, the narrative and the numbers that you have been able to attach to that story. At that point, you understand also, you need really a deep understanding of your business model, your market potential, your value proposition, and so that you understand, what really is the potential of the project, because from that point of view, you need to understand also the kind of ecosystem where you are. For example, it changed a lot if you're based here in Italy or in the US, and in terms of what kind of money you will have access to, and what kind of expectation the market will have. So all these combined can give you let's say, some information to put together a sort of a fundraising strategy, which means at the end, understanding how much money supposedly you will need from now to a possible way out or exit, or some exit windows, and how you will ideally split that amount in a sort of a perfect dilution strategy. And at that point, you understand that when you have split all these different rounds, as many as you need from 1 to X, right? You also understand the amount of each one, which is ideal. And so at that point, you also you should understand at least what kind of investor you should target as tier 1, as tier 2, because many times people are not succeeding in fundraising, or are delaying the time for getting their money because they're not targeting the right people, and because there is not a consistency between what their proposal is and to who are they proposing their project.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know if I answered to your question.
Yeah, no, it was kind of it was a shotgun question. You gave a great answer. I think you covered a lot of ground. So, but you did make me think of something. So those inconsistencies when someone is approaching investors,
how do they shore that up, or how do they? I mean, do they just have to go through a few rounds to see where they're missing the mark, or do you have suggestions?
Many times a learning process. Our value is actually that what we try to provide is try to avoid to learn it the other way.
Yeah.
But the reality is that you will have a lot of no's before one yes, or you just need one yes, right, from investor. And people also many times that they're not ready for that, right? They get disappointed about the negative answer, but negative answer really, and each time, there are negative answers that are constructive, right? So one of my suggestions is always understanding, not just taking the negative answer from an investor as this, but, raise questions and understand if they found some gaps so that you can fill those gaps for the next one, and you will be better prepared. Our role would be, to interject that a little bit before and understand if that consistency based on our, expert experience is already there, or there are some gaps that are clear, and so that we can, better prepare the story for, the investors, and that's what we try to do. But still, every time is different, and and every investor in every moment is different. So they can, and sometimes they have fair feedback. Some other time there's some bias in what they do. Some other times they're just out of target, but they don't say that, and they prefer to say something different as an excuse, I would say, or not to, or to avoid to say the truth. So you have to also to be able to identify, the positive feedback that you get. But yeah, absolutely, those gaps typically shows up when someone tells you, and as in life, I would say, you have to learn from the mistakes, and that's probably one of the key of the success for the organizations.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I can see where you're coming from. And, a company is not going to necessarily want to give bad or constructive feedback. And like you said, in life, I think most people, particularly an investor sitting across from a young entrepreneur, I would guess that they want them to succeed. Obviously they have to turn them down if it's not going to be a fit. But why else would they be listening if they're not, looking for a success? They're looking for someone they can invest in.
Yeah, and also the way you approach it, you should also be, you have to be compelling to investors. So you have also to be convinced about your story. But at the same time, investor many times looks at how coachable you are down the road, right? Because nobody's perfect in that moment. But many times you invest also in especially as early you get, as more the team is the core of the investment judgment, right? So if the investor understands that also the team is of course capable, has the right expertise, but is also coachable, it can also understand, the feedback or the fact that maybe something needs to be fixed down the road, but they know either how to do that, or they're open to learn or to increase the expertise in the team with new, talent. That's very important. So the expectation is not to be perfect at that moment. Expectation is to be as good as possible to convince someone that you're the right team and technology and value proposition to invest in.
Yeah. But you mentioned a lot of different areas when you're kind of giving an overview of your background. Could you kind of talk about some of the specific challenges that medical devices face in fundraising, or are there any specific challenges for them as opposed to maybe other industries?
Well, I cannot tell you compared to other industries just because I've always been in medtech. So
okay, yeah.
I don't have a comparison, but I would say difficulties there are typically because, difficulties are coming from the fact that demand is bigger than the offer, right? So someone will be successful and some other no. And sometimes the fact you're not being successful, again, can come from many different factors. It can be from a technology perspective, meaning technology is not as good as you expect to be, or it can be from, the technology is good, but it's not well protected, or, there's not the right protection, or you just, again, targeted the wrong people to talk with, because that business model does not, let's say, get along with, for example, VC, or not in that phase. And so you're just out of phasing, right? And you don't understand exactly why. Some other time is also, many times it is about team. Great idea, good technology, but the lack of ability to execution, and that's one of the major, I would say, subset. where difficulties come, and no execution means lack of results, or lack of results it means putting doubts in the investor side, right? And again, maybe team, but not just the expertise, but the inability to understand that you need to grow as an organization, and so people are not willing to invest in someone that is stubborn too much, right?
Yeah.
There's a good part of being stubborn, and there is a bad part of being stubborn, and so you have also to be really well balanced in that. Those are the first things that comes in my mind. But
I guess it really it's kind of like you said. I mean, I guess sometimes investing, you're trusting someone to a certain degree, so you're going to treat them like 100%. A human being. Yeah,
100%. There's going to be a lot of trust in especially in the early stage, because you're selling potential, right? And to sell potential and not results, or you're not in that phase where you can have attraction, you can have a lot of results from the clinical validation. You're selling potential, and selling potential, it means that it's correlated to who is selling that potential. So it needs to be consistent, the story, the numbers should be there. You should be able to defend what number you put in the business plan and so on. You should be able to tell that how it's going to be the go-to-market. What is going to happen there. That you will need a lot of people to get there. But you have your direction is clear, and you're also open to the flexibility, because you can have a great plan, but it's never going to be like you imagine, right? It's never going to be like the deck that you're presenting, right? From if you're presenting the same number in a month from now, you will already have to change it, right? So you have to be open. I always try to be fair and suggest fairness. I don't know if it's the right word, especially when it comes to business plan and projections. And I always say it's better to be open in discussion and explain all the different things that can vary and leverage and modify what is your plan, because nobody can really claim at this moment that this is what is gonna happen.
Yeah.
Nobody. And the reality is that if we meet again in 3-4 months from now, probably is not what I told you. And the only thing that you have to, I think really it's important really that you show is that you have enough expertise and experience to know that it's not going to be like that, but to know how you will manage it, right? According to different things that can happen. That's very important.
It's interesting as you're talking about that, you're going to have to defend whatever it is you say to a certain degree. I would think medical device, companies should be sort of used to that mentality. They know they may get audited or inspected by whether it's the FDA and so forth. So really, defending their plan to the investor makes sense. I mean, it's part of life, I suppose.
It is.
One thing I wanted to ask about then, and maybe a little selfish on my part, but we are representing Greenlight Guru from my side anyway, the Global Medical Device Podcast. So, and for those of you who are listening who don't know what Greenlight Guru is, it's an electronic quality management system that allows you to document your processes and procedures and work through a lot of automated workflows and so forth. So from your perspective, Cristiano, when you see a company that has something like that versus maybe a paper-based system, is there any difference in the minds of investors, or what is that difference? Just curious.
Yeah, so I would say the QMS and all about the quality and / regulatory, it became and is becoming more and more important, right? Because it's a crucial factor in the success of the entire project. So if you let's say don't put enough importance to that from the beginning of the project, and or you are not aware about how big is that kind of factor in what kind of impact it will have in your entire project, it may result in a sort of a either huge and unaffordable delay or in a total failure, right? So from an investor standpoint, definitely. As when you're pitching, you have to show that you know about your regulatory path. You have to show that you know about what kind of reimbursement the product will have once and it's going to be in the market, maybe in different health systems. You need also to show that you know what a QMS is. You have that in place already, and it's really efficient and well managed, and having something that is well structured. That is tailor-made but is well recognized in the market, that is working and supporting, many different companies, definitely is a risk factor that will be flagged out, right? So that's the main point. So it's super important. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great word that you used, I think, is risk and limiting that risk. Because I assume an investor, that's one of their biggest concerns, is what are the risks associated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is. And QMS risk is associated with the regulatory approval, getting that in the right amount of time, or getting that yes or no, right? Is about the go-to market, and then it comes back to valuation at the end. Is exactly, valuation is the same. It's about cash flow, growth, and risk is associated to that. So everything is correlated.
Yeah, that makes sense. So there's the easy, I guess, evaluation of that risk, and just there's a delay to market, but there's also the potential. What if you get to market and your QMS had issues, and now you have a audit finding, your reputation, so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. And also again, valuation, I was saying, risk, cash flow, and growth. And that would impact your growth, because once you get to the market, you have to spend your time trying to sell, right? If you have to fix things that should have been fixed before and spend time, it will be much more expensive. And then it will slow down the adoption rate and your growth rate. And then, I always try to suggest, and once you get to a commercial phase, you will be gauged on traction, which is the worst thing that can happen to you, because traction is never like you want it to. Right? It's never like in the Excel file. And so my suggestion is always try to push to talk about pilot commercial launch, limited launch, because once you claim your full commercial, then traction is going to be, criteria number one. Yeah. So if anything that will slow down that, and there's already the market that will slow down your adoption, because it's going to be tougher, because something is, planning, projecting, training, also in the QMS, or the training of the training the trainee, training the reps, training the customers and the accounts. But then, there's going to be pushbacks, there's going to be difficulties, there's going to be unforeseeable misusage or whatever. It's going to happen, everything. It's totally different when someone knocks on doctor's door and try to really have them using your technology. And then there's going to be the administrative side and blah, blah, blah. It's already a mess. You don't have to make it more complicated. You have to, prepare to get you prepared to that with a notice, right?
I love that advice about kind of phasing out your launch into the commercial strategy, so that you can maybe set yourself up for success, take off bites of manageable chunks, I suppose, of the market. That's what it sounds like. So this is slightly, I guess, a different direction, but one of the things I noticed we had on our notes, the difference in fundraising between the US and the EU. Is that something you can speak to?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are a lot of differences. They're mainly due to the differences in the amount of liquidity that is on the market, right? So, and US is exponential in comparison to what is EU. And I'm based in Italy, and Italy is the niche of the EU market. So already, like France or UK are 20-30 times the amount that are invested in every year in early stage companies from VCs, or the number of VCs. So what is the results coming from it is, first of all, that if you take the same company for the same technology, for argument's sake, and you put it here in Milan, and I don't know, in the Bay Area, there's going to be probably, for the same kind of product development, one company will raise 40-50 millions, and the other one probably will be able to get 10% of it, right? But both will get to the same point, right? And so there's going to be much more. It's also different business model in the way the companies managed from the let's say 2 areas. It's more, let's say, capital expensive invest, but also because there is more liquidity. So there are people, and also the way investor looks at are more keen on, say, I need you to have they're, let's say, many times they're positive about high burn rate, because it means that you're pushing, right? Here is maybe try to keep it with try to spend the right amount. And if you don't have to spend, don't do that, right? So there are two different ways to approach also on their side, but also because they have less money to put in these companies. And second thing I would say is from the M&A standpoint, they leverage that because typically, if you look at for the valuation and value and the amount, US is typically the probably majority where it comes the majority of the value in the M&A, right? So in the transactions, which means that of course the return that investors in US are let's say more aggressive because they know that they can get it. For a European investor, many times they know that at the end there's going to be the transaction to the US market if the return needs to be there, and so there's going to be probably more rounds. And the company needs to transfer part of their organization in US, so it's also different path, and that's also a big difference in the way investor approach. And then again, the number of VCs in US is totally different than here. A group of business angels is totally different than here. So the volumes are different. That's for sure.
Yeah. So just to make sure I followed, so a company like you said in the Bay Area in the US. There might be more money available for them, but also a more aggressive managing of that investment. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say, just to explain better, for sure there's an access to a bigger amount of money, all right? And that's one thing. So what I was saying is that, let's go back to valuation. The same company will be valued two different ways, same company in two different areas, because valuation needs to take into account also where it's located and what kind of, access to liquidity and funds the company will have, and how the offer of will look at the company, what kind of valuation the offer will make, right? So that's one thing. The second thing that I was saying, there's also a difference in the expectation of how the company will be managed. In US, there's a little bit more aggressive in terms of they want to see a burn rate. Right. I'm not saying splurging or wasting money. I'm not saying that. But the concept is I need a lot of money because I need to attract the best talent, and the best talent costs a lot. But I will have a high burn rate, but I will, push the project to the next phase, let's say faster or in a better way. Here, let's say in Europe, probably this is not as aggressive as it is in
okay.
So there are two angles of the same.
Makes a lot of sense. So even if you have a high burn rate in the US, they're willing to accept that high burn rate, assuming you get a payoff sooner, possibly.
Okay. So there's more will to. Right?
Yeah.
There's more will to. Right.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. The differences are always interesting in that regard. So I'm curious. So you being right there with the Europe, the EU MDR, has that affected? If a company plans to market to the EU versus the US, obviously we have those two different companies in two different locations, but how has that affected valuation, and what are your thoughts?
I think it changed completely the game right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know in the long term, because I hope that things will be a little bit less variable here in EU. I'm referring to. But it completely changed the game because before there was, almost I would say mandatory path for a European company saying you get, many times also for US company, get the CE first because it was easier and less expensive, and then target the FDA. Even though FDA is always for 80% I would say of the cases the big target due to the fact that it's the big market for value, right? Mm-hmm. And now things have completely changed because MDR made getting approval in Europe much more complex. It's still not 100% clear. There are a lot of things that because it's new, right? So there's going to be a lot of learning process on both sides, from notified body and from companies. There is the transaction phase from MDD to MDR. There's also a little bit confused. Or sobering at the moment. So many companies have changed completely their strategy. So looking at the FDA first, if we are not talking about a PMA in particular, mm-hmm. but a class 2, 510K, whatever, and then going to see afterwards. So that's definitely something that needs to be taken account, because valuation is also sometimes depends on the model, but sometimes it's also a discount of market and revenues projection, cash flow projection in particular. And so if you target first to go to the US market, it means probably you have stronger penetration or higher revenues before. The problem that I see coming is that, you can project that, but European companies have no clue how to commercialize in US. They just know that it's a big market, they know number, they know the market potential, they know number of procedures. But when it comes down to say, okay, how are you going to do that? That's a little bit,
playing at your home stadium, I suppose, sort of.
Exactly, it's different, right? It's vice versa. Of course, many times the US company think about domestic in first, second, and third place, right? When you talk about what is your plan outside of US, they say they don't have a plan, right? They say, we're just focused on US. So that's also something that we try to help, supporting them in having at least a plan, understanding, what kind of potential is going to be outside of US in different areas, and whether it makes sense to either execute something already or just have a plan that, can help them in the negotiation. For example, if they have to sit down with with the FDA approval, but, having a clear path plan and knowing the potential of their technology outside of US can be a good add-on in their valuation.
That's a great point.
Even if they didn't execute anything, right? Execute anything. Yeah.
Interesting. So this is kind of going to seem like a little bit of a rabbit trail, I suppose. But the FDA is working currently on harmonizing the current QSR, their regulation, with ISO 1345. I'm sure you're familiar. Yeah. They mentioned in their proposed ruling there were about 4,000 companies that were never planned to do ISO 1345 or pursue the ISO 1345 certification or and so forth, which is interesting. But I assume of that number, those are often just purely US specific focused companies. That being said, kind of what you're suggesting now is maybe if they have a broader outlook or more a global outlook, could improve their valuation even. So
I'm just saying that if you picture yourself sitting down with a strategic that wants global, it wants to, let's say, take over the company or just licensing from global rights, and if you have no clue, what is the potential, what the regulatory path, what is the market access, nothing. Of course, you don't have to, legs to stand, on.
Yeah.
And so what I was saying, if you don't want to execute for any reason, but at least have done your own work, may give you some skin, in that kind of negotiation when you sit down. And maybe, of course, it's not going to be 60% of the valuation that you will get out of that deal. But even 10% or 50% is better to have it than not to have it, compared to probably the effort that he made for, at least having an understanding of what, technology can worth outside of it.
Yeah. Sounds like that kind of research would definitely pay off. That makes sense. So if we kind of go to a different direction. So I'm curious about impactors on the way out success. So maybe timing and broad strategic overviews. If we talk about funding, that makes sense, what you're saying. But then what about the way out success? What are some different things that maybe we can look at it like this? What are some pitfalls you see companies getting into that negatively impact their way out success? Or do you have any thoughts on?
Well, there's also on this side, there are so many variables, and every time if you look at the statistic, clearly, the majority of the exit happen on a commercial phase, right? So that's statistic, is not a question, is a fact. But if you talk with, and that's also, if you talk with the entrepreneur and startups, I would say the majority of the time, they don't think that they will have their exit on a pure, complete commercial phase, right? Okay. So there's always this kind of contrast. Because they say, no, I'm just getting, the approval, probably have some post-market study, and that's it. That's when I'm going to be bought. And so, probably it can happen. But statistically speaking, less than, right? So you need to have a plan all the way, at least knowing how you can do that. Then, but it can happen also before or earlier, right? So what are the factors? Factors would be many, of course, many. I always say that you don't know when, the exit or someone will knock on your doors. You, as CEO of of startups or management team of startups need to work in a manner that in any time this will happen, you will be at the max valuation possible for that moment, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way you have to manage the company, right? And so factors. No, I mean, of course, you need to, for example, have a consistency between where the big part of the value of your market potential is and your strategy and regulatory path. Means that, if there are not other conditions, if you know that 80% is coming from US, probably, you should look at the FDA first in any case, right? If you want to have early, if there are not other conditions that, leverage for others path and strategies. That's one. Secondly is how close you are with the end user. That for me is very important, because many times companies have been funded, and product has been developed by a team of engineers and maybe some clinicians, but they have a lack of connections with the market, right, and with the customers. And that means that they cannot get maybe endorsement or the right endorsement. Endorsement is very important. That with the risk, then it's also right moment to get in touch with the strategics, which nobody knows when it is. Definitely, something that I always heard and I also experience is that you don't have to think that you get in touch with the Medtronic on Tuesday and you will get the deal on Sunday, right? So it's going to be a longer relationship. Maybe it's worth to start something even when it's early, because then they will, see you growing and you start the relationship, build the trust, and that's typically what it happens. Then, of course, there can be some how do you say, when you fall in love in a moment, but typically what happens is that also there's going to be a relationship, because they need to know you and the technology, and even them have to the risk. They're not risk taker in general, so that's another. So you have to really think about all the stakeholders that will impact your exit, and start working on all the different aspects. So the market, the strategics, clinical endorsement, putting in place, the partnership for commercial network, and all these things, need to be in each moment at the right level. Again, you then of course, if you will need to get to company that technology is sold in 40 countries with 100 millions in revenues, then everybody possibly would buy you, because you have the risk at everything, and you did it in 5 years, right? but that's the old grade that and maybe your return in that moment will be max, even though you have always to count also the dilution part of it, right? Because you maybe have been diluted. Depends also on the fundraising, right? So there is also a trade-off there. But those are the things that can really impact your exit ability. And then there is the one that I think it probably is 40% of all the rest, which is luck. I mean, finding yourself in the right moment, in the right time is the crucial thing.
We always forget about luck. You're absolutely right.
Because maybe in that moment, that strategic is looking for something in your area, right? And maybe that's one of the key. That's one of the key. You cannot control that too much.
Yeah, and sometimes we forget we might increase our luck by increasing our network. So there's a lot of different things there. Yeah, you mentioned something there, dilution. I think a lot of people, maybe when they're early on, they think, "Oh, I don't want to dilute my funds. I don't want to dilute my ownership of the company." What do you have any advice there? I know it's kind of a broad spectrum, but what are your thoughts on dilution?
Yeah, for the first thought is that dilution is just one part of the discussion here. I mean, there is the flip side, which is valuation, right? So many times I'm facing difficulties in having entrepreneur or management or owners, let's say shareholders, that they don't want to get diluted. And I always say, well, it depends on how much money, at which valuation, how you will use that money, what valuation will be the next time. So it's a trade-off. If you, I mean, just for argument's sake, it's better to have, I don't know, 100% of $1 million or 10% of $1 billion, right? Yeah. So you cannot just speak about dilution itself. It's dilution and the flip side, which is valuation. So it's always something that you have to really to be careful. There are some risk because you every time you should try to get less diluted possible, but you need also to get enough money, and especially have the ability to spend that money to let's say maximize the growth of the valuation of the company. If you are able to do that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, you don't have to matter about being diluted, because it's going to be at the end, the money that is going to come in your pocket are always getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's what you have to really look for, not about the percentage itself, but the real value.
Yeah, that makes total sense when you start talking about actual numbers. 10% of this number versus 100% of that. So that makes a lot of sense. How do you overcome those conversations, or just presenting that math? Does that usually get through to people?
Sometimes I also got the answer. Yeah, I prefer 100% of $1 million.
Control. Okay.
I said, okay, up to you.
I wonder if that goes back to the coaching thing that you were mentioning earlier.
Right, exactly. That probably is a red sign. Let's say red flag of possible risk in how coachable the team is. It's more to take the discussion to a more comprehensive angle and say you don't have to look at the percentage itself. You have to look at the percentage embedded in all this strategy and path and that you will have to undergo. And if you really understand and execute well, the percentage is not going to be a problem. Of course, you would be better to be at the max percentage possible when someone will buy you out. But at the end, what you really want is 60 million and not 50. You don't care about the percent.
Right.
You say, yeah, but I had 50%, or you said I got 60 or 100 millions instead of 90 millions, right? At that moment. So again, it's not just a percentage. It's about, everything.
The absolute numbers, versus relative. Yeah, that makes sense. So a couple of other things that I wanted to just kind of get your thoughts on. So you mentioned, when we were talking about negative impactors, you mentioned a few things, the strategics, those conversations, making sure that everybody's happy. You mentioned keeping in touch with the clinic and the end user. I thought that, those are different levels almost. In my mind, I think, I want to please the guys with the money, maybe. And to your detriment, you forget about the end user, which is really the person you're trying to serve and improve their quality of life. And without that, you're not going to get anywhere anyway. There are a few other things. So you also mentioned the team. And I guess one of the things I'm curious about is, how do you value that team, or how do you put a number on that team? Of course, you've got those resumes. This person worked so many years at J&J and so forth. But how do you convince or persuade and show the proof that team truly is worth what they look like on paper? Or is that ever a question?
Yeah, I mean, so there also, that's for a very early stage, but when you're evaluating a company super early, where basically it's a pre-seed, or they're just the idea, or even not an IP or filed or whatever. Of course, team is a big part of the total amount, right? And then it's sometimes it's a subjective type of evaluation. You don't have, of course, you're gonna base on their track record and how the team is, the expertise they have, if they cover the different area already, or if they're just everyone is engineer and there's nothing else and no business, enough. So that you try also not just to evaluate the person itself, meaning just objectively each person, but as an entire team, and all the area that needs to be covered, how many of those are already covered, and if they realize that they're missing that, because many times they even don't realize that, because they are so let's say, so not aware. I don't know if it's the right way to say that, but they're so not aware about what it will take. They even don't know that they will need someone that will have that kind of expertise. That's another red flag, right? So that's the way the only way that you can do. So you can say, yeah, there are people with a strong track record, yes or no. They're all committed, or they're not committed. Many times, there is no one that is really committed to the project. Still talking about a really early phase, but it's already a sign. And other times more, valuing the team as a group of human beings and understanding what kind of expertise they have combined.
But how do you value that commitment? I mean, is it like dollars they've invested or time they're spending, or?
Is more if there is someone that is really taking the project on his shoulders, yes or no. If they still have to look to their, let's call champion, right? Someone that will be many times there are projects that are funded and let's say developed by really group of expert people, right? But nobody really is committed to that project. They're just they're really all good, let's say, guidance for the project, but they don't have anyone that will be the core team. So they have still to build. So that's the commitment. If you need also, and this is also what investor at a certain point investor will demand that, right? If they have to put money, they will ask people to be fully employed, because that there needs to be people that wakes up in the morning and 10 hours they just devoted to that specific project. But the point for me is also understanding if there is someone that is putting all of what he has in the project, if it's going to be success or failure for him. It's not going to be like one of the 10 or 15 things that he has in parallel, or he's not going to change his life, right? Yeah. Whether he's going to be successful or not. If there is someone already, there are more than one that already are putting all their future in that's already something that gives for sure a lot more confidence. If then that is also combined with people with expertise that are sort of guiding these other maybe younger part of the founders or the founders team or whatever, the management team, that's the right combination that you should have at the beginning. Then growing the company, you will get fully employed and employees, and that's a different story.
That makes sense. We've covered a lot of ground, and I know we've kind of gone in different directions. Do you have any additional thoughts you would recommend for our listeners, or advice that you'd like to give?
No, I'm terrible in open questions.
No. I totally understand.
From the school, I never answered to open questions.
That's fair. Hey, you got to stick to your guns. I appreciate the conversation. It was good for me. Maybe we can do this again sometime, but yeah, I appreciate it. We'll put some links in the show notes so that people know how to get a hold of you, Cristiano, and your company. And I hope things continue to go well, whether it's in the US or the EU, things start to make sense. And those of you who have been listening, you've been listening to the Global Medical Device Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Improving the quality of life. I know we say it a lot here at Greenlight Guru, and I'll bet it's something you probably said at your company too. We help babies breathe at night. We give you another day to be a dad. We give you back your eyesight. Those are some of the things the medical device industry and our customers are able to say, because that's what they're doing. They're improving the quality of life for these individuals. Greenlight Guru is the only quality management software designed exclusively for the medical device industry. We built our software around standards like ISO 13485 and risk-based principles to help you bring safer devices to market 3 times faster. We're building the tools that will make it easier for you to build yours. If you're ready to find out how to improve the quality of life, contact greenlight.guru today.